Any guesses? The reason is this. Remember that advice that came up? Half of the group received advice from the CEO. The other half of the group received advice from a subordinate. The advice was identical. The only thing that was different between those two groups was the picture. And this is essentially an experimental design that's a takeoff of the Milgram experiments in the 60s. Now, nobody's getting electrocuted here, but it really creates that shock where people say, when they're talking about ethics, particularly in a classroom, everybody's on their best behavior. But when you can give them this shock, they can step back and say, whoa, you know what? We're all susceptible to these types of biases. And it's an honest mistake, and it happens to all of us, but we need to be aware of it. So these are the types of things that the different simulations out there can do. Talked quickly about strategy games, execution games, and the how games, these situational games. And a summary here, and I think everybody will have access to this particular slideshow as well. Typical costs. Take a peek, it's all over the map. What I can tell you is this. For strategy games, typically more expensive than the how games, because they're multiple days. The how games, the situational games are 1 hour, and you'll find yourself off the shelf in the $30 to $150 range. The execution and strategy games are typically a little bit more for off the shelf. Custom, that 500,000 can go up to 5 million depending upon the degree of fidelity that you're looking for. But what I'd say if you're looking to build a simulation is don't get wowed by the technology. Ask those questions. Ask, what does it teach? So does it teach where and why? What do you need from a learning outcome? And then that'll vastly reduce the amount of footwork that you have to do in terms of finding different folks who can create these types of games. Okay, drinking from the fire hose. Speaking rather quickly there. Any questions at this stage? Yes?
Taking individual performance in the simulation, is there a knowledge capture of individual or just a group experience?
So in different types of simulations, you can capture different information. In the execution that change simulation, two things there. From a debrief point of view, we look at both group process as well as the outcomes. So there's often a facilitator watching how people are interacting and can give individualized feedback around an individual's performance. That's also web-based, and people can play it individually afterwards. And you can aggregate data about how an organization as a whole is approaching a certain problem. That's phenomenal to capture from a knowledge management point of view. Does that get at?
No.
Okay, great. Other questions? Yes?
How many of these are you seeing as form conforming?
Down here in the situation, and in the how side, most of them, I would say almost all of them, are SCORM conforming. Up towards the top, less. And it's interesting, SCORM is something that's certainly been out here for a while. We're seeing more folks moving away from that because people want to get the training implemented just now, and often that requires going through a few different hoops. So even though things conform to it, people are saying, well, you know what, if you can deliver it without being SCORM, that's fine with us because we need it next week. So that's just a trend that we're seeing in terms of the compliance of AICC and SCORM.
Where do you see trends going with 508 components?
We're having more and more conversations around that right now. And in fact, we're launching a new engine right now that will allow make sure that some of our simulations are meeting that fully. Yeah, that's become more and more important. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope I haven't overwhelmed. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me here, and I'll leave a few cards as well with Douglas. And sorry that I have to. Thank you.